So my favorite languages for 2021 are Swift, Node.js with TypeScript, and React with JS10. Let's get right into it. Hello everyone, my name is Jordan, and on this channel we talk about all sorts of programming related topics. In this one, I'm going to explain why these three languages are my favorites for the year. Now, if you haven't already, make sure to like the video and go ahead and leave a comment with your favorite language and why that is your favorite language. I'd love to hear from you guys. Okay, so let's start with Swift. Swift is my #1 all-time favorite language. It's been that way for a while because it really takes away some more complexity from other programming languages that I've used before. But the great thing is you don't have to sacrifice that simplicity that Swift gives you. You don't have to sacrifice, maybe doing something a little more complex or complicated because the language is more simple. It's really a wide-ranging language where beginners can use it really well, but people who are really in the programming world and have been for a while can use all sorts of advanced features and get some really cool stuff done in Swift. One of my favorite Swift features by far is extensions. So let's say we want to add a function to the string type that counts the number of vowels in a particular string. Well, you can just extend the string type like this and just write your code, and it works on any string in Swift, which is so awesome. This means you don't have to make some static utility function somewhere. It just works on every single string just out of the box. Another great Swift feature is optionals. Let me give you an example of optionals here. Let's say we have a user object, which has a first name, a middle name, and a last name. And out of those three variables, we know they need to have a first name and a last name, but they might not have a middle name. In this case, we could just declare the middle name as an optional with a little question mark at the end of the type here. And now our property is optional, which just means it can have nil as a potential value. Okay, so now that we know that middle name is optional, let's see how we can access it. In Swift, we can say if let middle name equals user.middlename, for example, and now inside of that little if statement, we know that that middle name variable exists. This code will only run if that value does exist. This will help prevent crashes in case we don't have middle name, whereas in some languages like Java, if you tried to access something on a null variable, you'd have big problems and your app would crash. Okay, another really cool, but I think underlooked feature of Swift is type alias with generics. Now, these two can kind of go hand in hand. They don't have to, but I've found that they really work well in combination together. To illustrate this one, I'm gonna give a real life example from some apps that I work on. So when you have different views inside of an application, let's say we have a view that displays some text. We'll call it text view. Let's say we wanna show this inside of a table. Well, a table in Swift and iOS expects that you have a table view cell, but our text view is not a table view cell, it's a text view. Now we could go create a custom cell for this, or instead we could create a generic wrapper class that allows us to pass a view into a generic table cell class. I'll show exactly how this works. I use this all the time in production. It's fantastic. From there, we can make a type alias inside of the controller where we're showing this table and just say type alias text table cell is equal to generic table view cell, and then inside of the angle brackets, you just put text view. And now you have your table view cell of your text view, and it just shows up with this code. This is fantastic because it means you can now use this text view inside of a table view. You can use it inside of anywhere else you want, a collection view, a stack view, anything in there. So I know that's a little bit of a specific iOS example there, but type alias and generics are just awesome, and Swift handles this really, really fantastically. As much as I would like to keep talking about Swift, I'm going to go over my last thing here. There's just so many good things to talk about Swift. I highly encourage you to go read the documentation and pick it up as a language. Super great one. So my last feature is closures. Now closures, the only reason I say this is such a great feature about Swift, I know a lot of other languages like JavaScript, Kotlin, they have closures and callbacks and that sort of thing. But as someone who started with Java and then went to Swift as a sort of second, third, fourth language, closures is just fantastic. Having them built into the language and the way they are implemented in the language is fantastic. I'll show an example here of a function that takes in a closure as an argument here and then calls that for later. Super great. You can see how well this works out at the call site. Super, super easy. I use this feature all the time for all sorts of things, communicating between view controllers in an iOS app. If you're familiar with that kind of thing, that's one way where I really use it a lot. Things like that, super, super helpful feature. If you want to learn more about Swift, there's this really great website called Swift by Sundell. I'll link that down in the description. It's run by a guy named John Sundell. Great, great guy. Puts out some amazing content on Swift. I highly recommend checking that out to learn Swift. Before I move on to the next language, I just want to remind you to make sure you subscribe to the channel and you have notifications on. I'm trying to upload a little more frequently now, and so if you're interested in the kind of content that I produce, go ahead and click that button. Okay, so my next language pick for 2021 is Node.js with TypeScript. Now, I know that Node.js is not a programming language. However, with TypeScript, I found that my productivity with it has just skyrocketed. TypeScript is seriously that good, and the only thing it really brings to the table, I mean, it has a lot of great features, don't get me wrong, but it just makes JavaScript more like a regular programming language and less like a functional language like it was designed to be. And I found this helps greatly when working in a production environment where things are, super critical to make sure they work correctly. One of my biggest pet peeves with JavaScript that some would say is their favorite feature is that you don't have to declare certain types for variables and functions. TypeScript allows you to still do this with the any type if you still want that feature, but that's not really why I'm using TypeScript. I'm using TypeScript to make sure that if I call a function or initialize an object or something, I know the types ahead of time that I'm going to get back. This makes it really easy to predict how an application is going to function, whereas with traditional vanilla JavaScript, you really get a layer of unpredictability, which is just not really okay, in my opinion, for a production environment. Now, by using TypeScript in Node, it actually makes Node feel really close to Swift in a funny way. That's probably why I like it so much. It just feels really lightweight. I really enjoy working with Node and back-end projects, but that was one of my biggest pet peeves, is that I didn't have full control. So TypeScript has really eliminated that. Now, if TypeScript had optionals and extensions like Swift does, I think I would actually feel very, very, very good about TypeScript. But as far as I'm aware, it doesn't have something crazy comparable to these two things. Let me know if I'm wrong in the comments, because I would love to start using something like that if it does exist. Now, beyond just TypeScript being a great drop-in, essentially, replacement for JavaScript, NPM with Node is fantastic. It means I don't have to reinvent the wheel every few seconds. Of course, don't over-rely on NPM like a lot of people do, but it's nice to know that there's certain open source tools and libraries like Express or JSON Web Token, things like that exist to help you out with what you're doing. So I know the section there was a little bit short, but honestly, using TypeScript with Node has really been that great to move Node to the top of my list here and make it number 2. Okay, so my third and final section here is React. So React, I know, is more of a framework for doing web applications, but I've really found it so different compared to some other alternatives that I've done some brief research on, that it just really can be classed as its own thing. So the way React handles just state with functional components and everything like that is just fantastic. When you're writing a React application, to me, it's just so incredibly lightweight and fast to work on that I just feel like I can get a whole bunch more done that I could, say, on working on an app or something like that, or a Java program. This is really aided because React has built-in hot reloading, so you just change some code, save the file, and instantly you have some change as well, which is super awesome. Makes me way more productive as a developer. The hook system and state and that kind of thing, functional component features are fantastic. I've recently been switching a production application written in React over to functional components, and I've really, really enjoyed it. It's made me enjoy working on this application, removing this tech debt from this class-based React app into something more functional. Really, really great job that the team over there has done. The state system especially really makes things easy to reason about because, especially with TypeScript as well, you can actually set the type of a state object, which just makes things even better. And again, the one feature here, functional components and hooks, have really shot this up my list. If that change didn't happen, this would probably not be number 3 on my list. So working with React, the best thing I can say about it, it gives me the same feeling I got when I first started to do iPhone development and making apps. It just feels so, so amazing. I feel like I'm learning something new all the time. I feel like I'm just being really, really efficient and productive as a developer. Really, the only difference that I feel between React and something like an iPhone app is just one of them's a website and one of them's an app. The developer experience is seriously that good. I'd highly recommend you learn React just so you can make some quick and dirty websites. It's not always the best solution. In fact, I still use plain vanilla HTML and JavaScript for certain projects, very small scale things. But React, when it's called for, is just a fantastic tool. I highly encourage you check it out. So that was my top 3 list of programming languages and tools, really, for 2021. Again, make sure to leave your favorite in the comment section below and join our Discord to chat with me more about this. We have some specific channels we just opened up for things like Node.js, React, iOS, Android, and also some Minecraft stuff if you're interested in that as well. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Take care.